But they're really saying to you that one of the reasons for the destruction through the flood is because mankind was eating meat. And so he destroys the earth because of the eating of animal meat. And then as soon as Noah comes off the boat, survives the flood and starts to get going again, he is told to do the illegal thing that destroyed the earth. But that's something for you to look into, because you've got these people in these Abrahamic religions who are obsessed with the killing and slaughtering of animals to drain the blood out of them. Our lesson is titled Blood in Meat. And I'm going to read here from Leviticus chapter 17 verse 11, a very common verse. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that maketh an atonement for the soul. And if you want more, you can go all the way down to verse 16 where the chapter ends, to see how the God of the Torah is helping the people to go through all kinds of special rituals with the dead creature, like washing it and so on, or whatever else he's talking about, and bathing yourself after if you get somehow contaminated by the blood, like if the blood gets on you or something like that. So if you look at that, then you understand that if you're going by a commandment in Eden to eat the fruit of the tree, you don't have to go through all these special kinds of stuff to clean yourself as if you have become impure or, contaminated because you're eating the fruit that the Creator said to eat. So that makes Leviticus chapter 17 suspect to me where it comes to the eating of animal meat. And I told you already when he told Noah in Genesis chapter 9 to eat the meat, that is not right. I've done lessons on that before. And so the God of Israel with his commandment is in error. And I've told you before that God, according to my studies now, could not have given this commandment, or rather the Creator could not have. But maybe the God of Israel, sure, I can see that happening. But something is seriously wrong, as this God in the scriptures contradicts himself. He says, eat the fruit of the tree, and then he's going to tell you afterward through Noah to eat the animals of the earth. And I've pointed out before that many people who teach the Torah teach that animal eating or eating of animals was a part of the reasons why the earth was destroyed in the what is called the flood of Noah. And my argument, the first time I thought about this kind of stuff with Noah, is that what these Torah teachers are really saying to you, if you think about it, is that eating animal meat by killing animals, or if they're already dead, you're going to hurry up and eat them, was a part of the judgment of the earth, to destroy it and leave only 8 people, according to what they say. I haven't looked into the flood yet, but I'm changing a lot of things because I'm going from a common sense point of view with the scriptures. But they're really saying to you that one of the reasons for the destruction through the flood is because mankind was eating meat. And so he destroys the earth because of the eating of animal meat. And then as soon as Noah comes off the boat, survives the flood and starts to get going again, he is told to do the illegal thing that destroyed the earth. Can you imagine you're desperate in life and you've got all kinds of big problems, but you've got big dreams as well. and you go rob a lot of money from bank or wherever you rob it from, and then you go to jail. I don't know what kind of time you would serve for that kind of stuff, but let's say you go to jail for like 10 years, where you are convicted in a court of law for having done something wrong according to the law of the land. You went and you stole all this money. And then as soon as you are being released because you served your time, when they're checking you out of the prison, and they tell you it's all right to go and steal more money. This is what the God of Israel is saying through this whole fake story with Noah, that it's all right to eat meat. So the God of Israel is contradicting himself. Whereas Malachi chapter 3 verse 6 says, I don't change. I am the Lord, I do not change. So why is he changing it now and telling Noah you can eat the meat, when he just killed most of the people on the earth except for 8 that survived in the flood on the ark, for doing this kind of spiritually illegal stuff? Now I've been wondering for a time, something which I've been slowly looking into, and I've got more lessons to come on this topic whenever I can fit in a topic like this, based on other stuff I'm looking into. But I've been wondering for a while, can the way how Torah teachers teach that you should slaughter the animals in a kosher kind of way, and you have to drain out all the blood and wash the meat to get out all of the blood of it. And something in me just told me, wait, I don't even think that's possible, to get out all of the meat, so all of the blood out of meat. That does not mean that I'm saying it is wrong. I'm just saying, I just felt to myself, I better check that out because I don't think that's possible. But while I'm still researching the thing, I'm getting a very clear understanding that people are discussing this stuff, as I'm checking many sites online, and people are people are having to go through all kinds of stuff to try to deal with this. And so that's telling me that even what they have to go through in order to get the meat to be kosher after it is dead, which means that you are eating dead creatures to give you life, and I covered that already in another lesson. But they have to go through all the stuff to try to get the thing to be kosher, when the fruit on the trees that the Creator said was just kosher from the start. Its very existence is one that is quote unquote kosher. But you have to do all these kinds of extra stuff in order to get the food to be kosher so you can eat it. And so one should understand that when the Most High is saying to not consume the blood, I've pointed out before in another lesson that what he's really saying is don't eat the flesh or the animals that have blood running in it. And so what people do now is just try to get the blood out by washing it out so that you can eat the animal. When, to me, what he's really saying is don't eat the animal that has blood flowing in it. Because it says here, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. So you try to get out the blood. In other words, you try to get out the life. So if you remove the life-giving stuff inside of it, you are no longer getting life from it. Which means in a spiritual kind of Torah sense, you are eating dead food. And this whole term, congregation of the dead, comes back to my mind. But you are eating dead food. Whereas all that is contained in the fruit that you're going to eat is going to be transferring life into you in a spiritual kind of sense that is more healthy and more connected to the Creator. And even after you pick the fruit, and like even if you leave the fruit outside, even if you're sun drying your fruit, which they've been doing since ancient times, you are getting even more energy from the sun being stored in the fruit as the fruit is drying. Like let's say when they're going on ship to try to find new lands or whatever, are doing trading or whatever, and they're not sure what's in the new land, like very early days in history, drying of fruit was one of those things that they did to keep fruit alive, because the fruit would go bad if kept too long. But if they sun dried it, they could still eat it. They're not going to get all of the nutrients and so on that was in it if they freshly ate the fruit, but they're still getting a lot, and the sun is packing in more energy into the fruit, thereby still giving you the light of the creature, of the creator that's coming into you through the fruit that he said to eat. So you see, it is a different kind of outlook on the creator and the creator's instructions than that which comes through these instructions to eat meat. So the creator, if he is the God of Israel, here, I mean, there's just some disconnect right here between the commandment to eat of the fruit and like the herbs of the field, but things that grow off the ground basically, and to eat of these animals. But I notice that it is difficult when people are trying to discuss this stuff about the meat, because I am my guess right here, and I'll just call it a guess right now because I'm not finished studying it yet. But if I'm making a lesson on it already, that goes to show you that in some kind of way I have uncovered, I shouldn't say enough yet because I still got a lot of searching, but I've uncovered a couple basic things so far that makes me feel comfortable going forward with a lesson like this, and I've got more lessons to come. Because, I mean, can you really take away all the blood out of meat? Can you really do that? Now, I'm going to have to answer the question over other videos, some more, right? But that's something for you to look into, because you've got these people in these Abrahamic religions who are obsessed with the killing and slaughtering of animals to drain the blood out of them. And to me, to anybody anyway who really sits and thinks about it, this is clearly something that is against nature, or I should say against creation. Because when you are doing creation, like when the creator is doing creation in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, he is setting up life and causing life to be. But when you kill the animal, even if you're killing it before the Lord God, like the Israelite priests did, you are taking away life, so much life. And since there were millions of people in ancient Israel, and sometimes they would slaughter for days, they were killing millions and millions and millions of these things. In a single year, multiple millions of these animals. And I want you to think about just how many of these animals, like lambs and so on, would have been available in 1 year to do all of these many sacrifices, these daily sacrifices or these weekly Sabbath sacrifices, and add to that the special high holy days of sacrifices. How fast do these animals really grow? Right? And I started looking up some figures on that for modern Israel now to see how many animals are available right now in modern times. So you can look up that as well too. I'm not going to bother throw those figures now, but trying to compare that with what would have been available back then. You're going to find that somehow, while I'm not still done yet with it, somehow the numbers seem kind of scary to pull that off for many, 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 many millions of these creatures, all these lambs all the time. But look at one case here. You see, I read many of these things for months, actually from last year, and it was frustrating at first, but it's starting to crack now. From this website, I always say I'll try to include the link, but sometimes I really do forget. So I like to mention the link just in case I forget to include it in the video. So even though it's long, I'll still read it here if somebody wants to look it up. And this is the part I'm going to read is probably about 2 or 3 paragraphs or so, and It's a discussion, actually, like a blog discussion, and it's part way down the page, maybe 2/3 of the way down the page, and it's from https://www.reddit.com, that's reddit.com/r, that's the letter R, then /ask culinary /comments / see, this is where it gets tricky now, / okay, I can't make that out, which letter that, if that's a 1 or an L. So that's why I'll need to the string just goes long anyway. But reddit.com, you can search for reddit.com, and the topic being discussed is the question how to stop bleeding chicken legs, wings, and thighs. And it should link you to the article from Reddit. And basically the idea is that somebody is here asking, how can you remove the bleeding from chicken legs, wings, and thighs when you're cooking? Alright, so here the person starts to ask now. Whenever I try to fry or bake chicken legs, wings, and thighs, the bones bleed a lot, and I'm worried if they'll turn out undercooked. And I remember, okay, here they're saying even you get this happening in restaurants as well. And I remember when I used to eat meat, sometimes, yeah, you would see the blood cooked in it. But now this person is saying here now, they're talking about doing it in a kosher way. And see the weakening of the argument, because everything that can be challenged is going to be challenged in this life in the end. Even if it lasted the past 2 or so thousand years, it's going to start cracking as people become more and more frustrated with deception, right? And people start digging in. And so here what this person's saying now, talking about the kosher process. The people were saying stuff above and so on, and then he jumps in here now saying, from Reddit_rabbi is responding at this particular point in the conversation, and Reddit_rabbi says, this is not fully correct. There is an additional step in the process of producing kosher meat that is critical both for kashrut and for understanding the flavor difference. This step is the salting process. So using salt to clean the blood out of the meat. Note right there as I pause with the reading that in order to keep the instruction from the God of Israel in Leviticus chapter 17, they have to do these things in order to still eat the animal but not get out the blood, but not consume the blood. But like I say to you, I don't think you can get out all the blood out of meat, like 100%. And now I'm looking into other stuff like UV lighting and a few other stuff there that I've been looking into, some scientific stuff, right? So, I'm going to be coming back with some more lessons on this. Not necessarily quickly because I'm, doing other stuff. But let's go on. Simply slaughtering the meat via the ritual cut and draining the immediate blood is not sufficient for the meat to be kosher. Bam. Let me pause right there and add in this before I continue with the reading. You're telling me that in Solomon's time and all the other ones of them, when they were killing animals for days and days and days and eating the food in a feast before the Lord their God on high holy days, for millions and millions and millions and millions of them, and it's done on the particular high holy day. You're telling me that they had all that time with the millions of people to stop and wash repeatedly and soak for a while all these stuff and still get it done in the day? Because if the Lord their God is telling them this is the day when you eat the stuff before the Lord your God, so if they're stretching it over a few days, are they following the instructions to eat, to consume the stuff before the Lord in that particular day? Because if they're washing and stopping and doing all this stuff, then basically everybody isn't going to be fed, and people are waiting to sacrifice their animals on the next day and eating it on the next day, so they're eating it on the wrong day. And there's already that issue already where I think there's some problem, I can't remember properly, where Aaron was saying the men couldn't eat the meat because of whatever problem, and he had to go and check with Moses, and I think he had to consult the Lord, and then eventually said, all right, it's okay. They couldn't eat because of whatever reason at the specified time on the high holy day. All right? So you see, even the day, the timing is correct. And look how long you soak your meat. Sometimes, like, you let it marinate overnight, sometimes even a couple days and so on. But anyway, he's saying just simply cutting the meat and draining the immediate blood is not sufficient for the meat to be kosher. So I guess like he's trying to point out here that there's still some more blood that you need to get rid of. So you see how much you have to go through just to get out the blood? To eat food that was not initially commanded by the Creator, but commanded at a time when he had changed, even though Malachi 3 verse 6 says, I'm the Lord, I do not change. So now it goes on saying additional blood is removed. That means that when they were doing this, just simply draining the blood all along. Because how many times are you seeing in scripture where they wash this meat like that? And do all that kind of stuff. How come it is not, and I don't know, but I just don't remember this, so I'm going to have to look that up too. But I don't remember them emphasizing stuff like all the time, like they're washing repeatedly these meat and so on. You just said, well, if they're cooking meat, they would have had to wash it. But you see, if it was so important to get it done right in a very kosher way, the scriptures would have pointed it out that they repeatedly wash the stuff to get out all the stuff. But you might argue with me on that, so I won't belabor that point. But additional blood is removed through a process of soaking and salting the meat within the first 72 hours of slaughter. This salt is both very effective at removing the blood. That means then they were just going through and just, you can imagine if you're doing millions of sacrifices in the Torah days. You're not going to have all that time to do all this stuff and to do it completely, even if you tried some of it. Because you remember, these are still people, they are still humans. Look at some modern function today. You're ordering food, catering company and so on. And sometimes you're coming late with the food, or it's not enough food and so on, and everybody doesn't get to eat, and so you have to try to hurry up at the last minute to order some more extra food from a different catering company, because the first one, it will take too long to prepare another batch of food. And you're telling me that Israel just gets it perfect all the time to go through this extensive process of washing thoroughly multiple times the meat and soaking it and leaving it for a while to soak, and doing that multiple times to get it out all for everybody to eat in one high holy day from millions and millions of people? I don't buy that. I don't buy it. Anyway, the salt is both very effective at removing the blood and at flavoring the meat. And notice the flavoring, like people said, oh, you gotta flavor the stuff to kind of help with swallowing the meat and whatever. Kosher meat tastes more salty because it has been bathed in the stuff. As an aside, this is what kosher salt is. Kosher salt refers to a granular size of the salt crystals that is considered to be the most effective at drawing out the blood. So you got to go through all this stuff to draw out blood, So if the flesh of the blood, you are going through all these processes, which I don't understand how they can be a kosher process or something like that, to draw out life. When as a Torah-based person, you should be more interested in keeping the life of the flesh active. But it goes on, those who don't like the taste of kosher meat can undo some of the flavor by soaking the meat repeatedly. That takes more time for one high holy day, repeatedly in fresh water to try to remove more of the salt. But my experience has been that it is still fairly irreversible. Anyway, let's go on down now. So I've read about half of what I want to read, so whatever time that just took with my interjections, that's about the time what's left to be read. So it goes on here, brining or buttermilk soaks won't really solve the problem, but man, do they ever add a lot of flavor. I love a good overnight buttermilk soak on chicken. I don't really need that part. Okay, let's go on now on to the bleeding problem. Chicken legs and wings still have veins in them. It's next to impossible to pull them out unless you were to debone the chicken fully and remove them. Now, think of these millions and millions of families in ancient Israel coming before the priest on a high holy day. And they got to try to debone all this stuff. How much more extra time that's going to take to fit in all of that stuff. Anyway, as you cook it, the small amount of remaining blood in them will come out. That's natural. When in doubt, temper your chicken. Use a quick read digital probe with a thin tip on it. Insert the probe into the thickest part of the chicken, estimating roughly to the center, and avoid hitting the bones. Okay, so he's saying go up to about 165 for the temperature. Anything below, you run the risk of getting sick. Now the point from that I want to point out here is that when this person said, as you cook it, a small amount of remaining blood in them will come out. Now, you have just been told that the kosher way to remove the blood is to wash it repeatedly, and even soak it and salt it repeatedly and doing all kind of stuff. And when you've done that, the blood is still in there. And notice what you're doing. Tell me if this is really kosher. And if Israelites would have been doing that way back then, a couple thousand years ago, that when you are cooking it, some of the blood will still be bleeding out and you'll have a bleeding problem. So you're telling me that it is kosher to be cooking your meat before the Lord your God in blood? You must not consume the blood, but you're going to cook in a pot of blood. And of course, I'm just exaggerating by putting it that way, because it's really a pot of water, or however they're doing it. But basically, if it's bleeding, you are then boiling your chicken and cooking your chicken bathed in blood, the thing you should not consume. And then afterwards, so you see, you can still take that out afterwards while it's hot and wash it off and so on to get off the blood off it. But can you just imagine how kosher and how righteous this is? What kind of dietary law is this? Where you get it kosher correct by actually cooking your chicken bathed in blood. Tell me if something about that, when you sit and dwell and meditate on that, tell me if in your heart, you don't have to tell this to your congregation, to your camp, or to whoever, but in your own heart when you lay in your bed and you think at night, and you look up at the wall or the ceiling, or you sit in your easy chair when nobody else is at home, and you're in that quiet room in your living room, and you sit and you think, is it a very kosher thing and a pleasing thing to the Lord, in an honest, bare bones, honest, down-to-earth kind of way, if it seems kosher to you to cook in blood while your food is being bathed in the blood that you should not consume because it is forbidden. It is forbidden, but cook so that blood is washing all over your food. Are you going to wipe blood all over the mango or the apple that you pick off the tree and then go and rinse off the blood afterwards? But why are you going to do it with your meat? So the understanding is that when he says, do not consume the blood, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, the whole set of verses is actually saying to you, if you will be spiritually honest with yourself, if I could put it that way, is really saying to you, do not consume animals that have blood in them. So the understanding is that when he says, do not consume the blood, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, the whole set of verses is actually saying to you, if you will be spiritually honest with yourself, if I could put it that way, is really saying to you, do not consume animals that have blood in them. That's what it's really saying. But they get you to focus on the blood itself when the focus is really the whole makeup of the animal. Do not consume the animal that has blood in it, which is the life of the flesh. That then means if you're not consuming the animal, you are not going to try to extract the blood out of it in any kind of way so that you can eat the animal. That is what it means. And there is no unfairness in that, because how many scriptures do people teach, and you yourself have taught? Even if you're not a teacher, but you're just talking to somebody about the Bible, how many times have you looked at a verse and they ask you about it, and you give your understanding based on how you sense the verse and how you sense the whole flow of the chapter? You see what I'm saying? So when you sense what's going on in these verses from Leviticus chapter 17, verse 11, down to the end at verse 16, the sense of it there that keeps in line with original instruction from a God who says he does not change, is that you should not consume the animal, but they have somehow through teaching made us focus on consuming the blood, when the focus is on consuming the animal, but the animal is made up partly of blood along with everything else that it's made of, like bones and muscles and so on. See, it just simply means don't eat the animal. Now go on now to read, as you cook, small amount of blood remaining in them will come out, so it's natural. So that's natural, he's saying. The vessels may remain. The vessels may remain. The vessels may remain and can be a sign of distress prior to butchering. So the vessels might remain, but basically they're saying through this kind of teaching that if you do it like this, boil it, and wash it repeatedly and so on, that it's getting all kinds of. But if the vessels are remaining, then what are you really doing? You can't consume the blood, but you're going to cook and consume all the parts in it that the blood flows through. Now you have to consider as well too that like I said, I'm still looking into this stuff, so I'm going to come back with more information as time goes on. Now I want to point out here something that a lot of people are saying, so you should hear this as well. Unless it's thick red, so vessels will remain unless it's thick red black goo and not marrow. It's likely myoglobin from muscle tissue and not hemoglobin from blood. So they're saying, like, when you see red, like the red that makes your meat look red, and sometimes that red liquid in the pot is not blood, but it's a myoglobin, which you're saying is not actually blood. But keep in mind that you are just told prior to that blood actually still will likely come out. That you are just told prior to that blood actually still will likely come out. So just because there is myoglobin does not mean there is not also hemoglobin coming out, which is from blood, which means the blood is still in the flesh that you are cooking. Anyway, he says, either way, don't worry about it. If you have a lot of vessels, you may be eating a roughed up bird though. So you see that? Either way, don't worry about it. Why? Because you should just go ahead and eat it anyway. So notice that the writer here is saying, you're going to get some blood coming out a lot of times, but that's natural. And then he goes on to say, it could also likely be myoglobin from muscle tissue and not hemoglobin from blood. But either way, don't worry about it. So either way means both ways. In other words, if it is myoglobin that's causing the red stuff in the pot, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and eat it. And if it is hemoglobin from blood, either way, still just don't worry about it. So just go ahead and cook. You see that? Because this kind of stuff, if you read many people talking about this stuff, you're going to get the sense that if you're trying to be really 100% correct with the commandments, you're just going to say, you know what, I should just stay away from this stuff. Because at some point, it's just going to crack. Okay, and there's probably more on that webpage. So, but yeah, if you look it up though for more people. But anyway, like I said, I'm investigating this because I'm not convinced that all the blood can be removed, even if it's only a trickle, like a trace of blood left. And you know how blood, well, I shouldn't say that because I'm gonna be doing another video with that at some other point. But just to let you know, and you can look it up yourself too, whether there's blood still in the meat after you have hung the animal upside down and drained out. So you drain out this chicken to make it kosher, but then when you're cooking, you're still ending up a lot of times with blood in the pot. And I used to see this blood a lot of times from as a child growing up. A lot of times. Mind you, we weren't eating kosher blood back then anyway, but we still got rid of the blood and still saw blood still after we got rid of the blood. Right? So, so to wrap it up here, even a kosher person is telling you that after all these kosher steps, or potential kosher steps, I should say, you're still going to be faced with blood in it, to the point where the person says, either way, don't worry about it. So as much as they are trying to be so kosher, you're still faced with the blood problem. Why? Why? Because the blood is in the animal, and the scriptures are really letting you know, do not eat the animal that has blood in it. Do not eat the creature that has blood in it. Do not eat the thing that has blood in it. That's what it's really saying. Because no matter how kosher you be, and that's why they're coming up with new ways. Now there's new technology. I guess I was reading one stuff. I won't bother get into it now. But basically, some new advanced ways to get out more of the blood. That means it looks like you're still eating blood even when you're doing it in a kosher way. Even a trickle of blood, you're still consuming the blood. And they tell you, well, you know, the Most High is not going to be angry with you if you're consuming a small amount, but if it is a certain amount, you know, like that whole one drop rule for this Indian fake stuff that they're doing to trick us. Yeah, so I mean, if you see a little bit of it, then you're still consuming it, but they say it's okay. And I've actually heard this teaching, but at the time I had no clue I'd ever be looking into something like this. Because at the time, it just wasn't on my mind that there could have been something wrong with the sacrificial laws. 2, if there's a small amount of blood that you are consuming, and you see how when they're doing blood cleanup and so on, how difficult it is to get rid of blood. Because blood actually sticks and bonds to surfaces, very hard to get rid of. But just a little water is going to wash it out and just boil it out. And so, yeah, so if you look then, if you're consuming just a small amount, then even over a lifetime, an ancient Israelite doing all these high holy days in the Torah days would have been consuming, when added up, like combined, a whole lot of blood through his lifetime, a whole lot of blood through her lifetime, a whole lot of blood through the children's lifetimes. So all those Israelite children from the Torah days a couple thousand years ago were consuming a whole lot of blood throughout their life against what the commandment said, and you wonder why they got sent into captivity. If they have to do all this stuff now in modern times to figure out this stuff and adding stuff to figure it out, that means they weren't always doing it just this way. It's a trick. It's the trick. Don't eat the stuff with the blood in it. In other words, don't eat the animals because they got the blood in it, and the Most High said to eat the fruit that grows, the food that grows off the ground. So this is also showing you that the sacrificial system in the Torah is not proper. It is absolutely not proper. If you're faced with all this kind of stuff, the simplicity of how you should eat your food, just pick the fruit from the tree, for example, shows you that is a clear difference from how complicated it is to try to eat meat before the Lord God. of the Torah.